We have to. That's kind of how it feels. All right. Good evening.
Hello.
Hi, guys. I'm Rachel.
I'm Pastor Stephanie.
And we're excited to be doing this webinar together tonight. We did not plan it, but we do coordinate. We're both wearing red. So it's going to be a good night. I told you that we think alike. It's going to be
scary.
Yeah, scary and awesome at the same time. So hi, Kelly. We're so glad that you guys are joining us. So feel free, as Robbie's saying here, to ask questions, put them here at the screen so that we can tackle those after our interview. Hi, Kimberly, and some of the other questions we've already received. So right down there, I think you can type those in. Okay, so your name is Stephanie.
Yes.
And where are you from?
So I'm from just outside of Richmond, Virginia in Chesterfield County. I was born and raised there and left to go to college.
Where'd you go to college?
Went to Virginia Wesleyan, just kind of down the street, for 3.5 years. And I studied abroad in Spain and loved that. Went to Sevilla, Spain, and had an awesome time.
Wow. Yes. That's amazing. What was your major?
Well, so that's kind of a funny story. So I accidentally got 3 majors. My sister loves the story. So I started off a political science and religious study major because I love religious studies and I love studying the government. But I went to Spain. And so my last semester, I went to my Spanish professor and said, hey, I have all these classes. Can you look through? Do I have enough for a minor? And she looked at him and she looked at me and she said, Stephanie, you have enough for a major and you don't have to take any more classes. So I accidentally got a triple major.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So she's smart. She's well-traveled. And then when you graduated, what did you do?
Yes. So right after graduation, so I graduated in December. So I went home and saved money and worked for about 6-8 months. And then I went to seminary at Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. and had an awesome experience there for 3 years. While I was there both summers, I went to Guatemala and worked in villages in Guatemala.
Wow.
Which is really cool. Yeah. Remote villages, like no power, no running water.
What kind of stuff did you do there in Guatemala?
So they would bring, it was an organization that's out of Richmond that goes down to Guatemala in the highlands and builds stoves for women. And so these women, these families, but mostly women, live in these huts really that have, it's one room that the whole family lives in, and they were cooking and heating on an open fire. So that's not good for lungs. So we would come in and build these, what I would still never know how to cook on it because it was cinder block and had a nice flat top, but not the type of stove we're used to, not like knobs and such like that. But they also had chimneys. So that was the key part to get the smoke out of the house. So I would translate because I was a Spanish major, help translate. But it was crazy because a lot of the villages that we worked in, they spoke a native language. And so we'd have 2 translators, someone translating from the native language to Spanish, and then from me from Spanish to English. So I'm sure a lot got lost in translation, but the stoves all seemed to work. So that was good.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's incredible. And then when you were done with seminary, what did you do?
When I was done with seminary, I really prayed hard about what God was calling me to. I didn't really feel like God was calling me to be a pastor at that time. So I talked to my district superintendent and then started praying a lot. I was originally thinking about doing a PhD in Old Testament studies because I love the Old Testament. But I was honestly done with school. I was tired of studying and doing work. So I found out that the Global Ministries, General Board of Global Ministries of the Methodist Church was still accepting applicants to the US2 Young Adult Missionary Program. So I applied to that and spent 2 years as a young adult missionary in Los Angeles, California, which I just loved. I worked around immigration. So I worked out of a church that had a lot of immigrants. I helped to set up and expand our immigrant clinics. Now, these were more for legal work. Unfortunately, a lot of immigrants get taken advantage of because they don't understand the immigration system. And honestly, experts struggle to understand our immigration system. So people would be taken advantage of. So we would set up free consultations with an immigration attorney who would donate their time and tell people, yes, you're on the right track, or no, you need to stop seeing that person and go see someone else. So it was really powerful. I worked with churches that want to be considered immigrant welcoming, and then also with an awesome campus ministry at UCLA that did a lot of ministry to undocumented students. They realized that undocumented students were thankfully able to go to school, able to go to college, but a lot of them couldn't afford to eat. And so they set up a lot of feeding programs, but also just community, because everybody needs community. So really powerful, awesome stories, awesome people that I got to work with. So,
oh my goodness.
yeah.
So then after that experience,
Yes.
you went to the local church?
Yes. So after that, I prayed again. All right, God, do I stay out here? Again, I'm from Virginia. My mama she broke her heart when I moved. She had my sister and I take pictures at like a studio because she thought I was never coming back. So I prayed, and I really felt like God was saying, it's time to go back to be with your people. So I felt like it was time to go back to Virginia to serve in Virginia. So I contacted my district superintendent and told him, all right, help me find a church. So I decided to put myself on the associate list and interviewed with several churches, and New Creation United Methodist Church in Chesapeake was my first choice. And thankfully I was high on their list because that's where I was appointed. So for the last 6 years, I've served as an associate pastor at New Creation United Methodist Church. And that's in the Western Branch part of Chesapeake.
Wow. So even though you were an associate, you kind of worked with a church plant and a merger.
Yes, lots of experience. So I followed 2 full-time elders who were serving both as associates. So they had an associate pastor for one campus, the Grace Harbor campus, who'd had a church planter, Greg West, was the first pastor, and then I followed Mark Rickabaugh. So I was the third of a church plant. And then I also followed Eric Song, who was the full-time associate at the larger campus, Aldersgate. So it was a little overwhelming my first year and a half to follow 2 people who had full-time jobs and merge them into one job that I could handle. Thankfully, I wasn't married at the time, so that helped a little. But yes, thankfully now the job is much more manageable. So then about 2 years in, about the time that I was getting married, it was clear that financially we couldn't support having a separate campus. For the church plant that had merged with the larger church. So we prayed hard. We looked at so many options, the places where we could still worship. And God just kind of revealed to us that we needed to move into the larger campus. Excuse me. So we moved into the fellowship hall. We had an 11 o'clock service. They had an 11 o'clock service. And we decided we would try having 2 11 o'clock services at the same time. So we did it. The biggest fear was that the parking was going to run out. And I said, please give me that. I would love to have no parking because so many people are here. We've only a couple of times had that problem. But we have we have a modern service that now we've transitioned that to Grace Harbor to be called the modern service. And we have awesome loud music that we have doors. So at the organ can't hear us. So it has worked really well. And we have families where the kids will come to the modern service, the parents will go to the traditional service, and I'll get to meet up after. So
it's perfect.
Yes, it is.
Yay.
So what's funny, Pastor Rachel, is also the city has taken the front part of our property. So
are you serious? So you had to deal with eminent domain.
Yes.
Which is, sorry, we got fuzzy, guys. Which is what's happening literally outside of this wing of the church right now. See? Yes, Kelly, you are absolutely right. She is so prepared for us. Yes. Isn't it amazing?
God definitely knew what God was doing.
I know. And as I've told the folks in worship at the gathering, but I'll say it here too, when I got the call from Nashville to ask me to consider applying for this position with Discipleship Ministries and Path One, Brandon and I were praying, should we leave? Should we go? And when we realized that this is what God was calling our family to do, I reached out to the DS and let him know. And we were talking about who could come and be the next pastor here at the gathering at Scott Memorial. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear the jets the way we can, but they're pretty loud. And I said, there is only one person in this district. But I love all the pastors in the district. You're all fantabulous. But in terms of the needs of this church and the gifts of clergy that I see in our community, I was like, Stephanie is it. Like, I want her. Please send her. Please. So, he prayed, Kevin talked, but Stephanie's here. So yes. I could not be more thrilled because we've known each other for a while and respected each other's ministries. So, it's going to be good. It's going to be exciting. So what are you most excited about and most afraid of in thinking about your transition here?
Yes. So I am excited to be kind of the pastor. I've loved being the associate. I've gotten to work with two awesome lead pastors who have really mentored and coached me in wonderful ways. But even though they're not quite perfect, but close to perfect, there's still things that I wouldn't have done quite the same way. So it's like, I get to try it out. I get to make my own mistakes now. Not too many of them, hopefully. But my fears, fears. It has been nice as an associate to have someone else that gets to make the final call. So that'll be me now. Then it means I get to take the brunt. But also, we're in an interesting time in our denomination. So we have general conference. We have another general conference next year. And that's out of my control. Whatever the vote's going to be, I don't know. And so my fear is that the vote will go away, that many people here won't be happy with. And we could lose a lot of people because they just feel like they cannot faithfully be a part of a United Methodist Church. And so that's out of my control. And so I'm trusting God to handle that, to maybe even still have a job. Who knows? God, again, I'm trusting God with that too.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm trusting from Nashville.
Trusting
here in Virginia
Yes.
Beach. So,
Yeah.
so like my word of encouragement is one of the many reasons that I'm going to Nashville is to try to help the Methodist Church find a way forward, figure out what to do. And so Stick It Out Gathering, you guys are amazing. And there's still incredible work to be done here. And we know who we are here at the gathering, who we welcome, who we love, that we are just a church that wants to shower love on anybody and everybody, because that's, what Jesus has called us to do, is love our neighbor as ourselves. So we take that command very, very seriously. So I would say stick it out. Stephanie is safe. You can trust her. She loves you. She loves God and loves this church. And we'll just see what happens in 2020. And there was a meeting, just to update you guys quickly from like a general conference standpoint, that happened Next, where churches that were not thrilled with the traditionalist plan that was passed gathered together to figure out what they could do. And at the end of the conference, they're looking at two main options. There's another conference in September that's more widespread for more people to figure out just how to faithfully respond to this and prepare for General Conference 2020. So work is being done, like even as we speak, to prepare for it. And then that conference is happening in September. So Google it online. It's at Church of the Resurrection if you want to hear more, if you want to participate and attend. I'm hoping to be there, so it'll be great. Okay, let's see. I want to try to get all kinds of fun tidbits of information out of you. So what is the greatest strength that you think you bring to ministry?
Oh, well, I really feel like God has given me a gift of listening. And so when I use it, again, sometimes I fail, but when I use it, I'm good at remembering what someone has told me and kind of following up, and just empathy is one of my highest strengths. And so it can be very empathetic. Even though I might not have experienced exactly what they've experienced, I can feel it in a deep level and respond, hopefully appropriately. So that's a strength I bring.
I love that.
But I'm also a planner, so I'm fairly type A. I already have a 6-month preaching schedule, so
wow,
that's maybe a gift, maybe not. We'll see.
It's awesome. I think Bobby Wilcox is like super excited to know more than a week ahead of time what the sermon's going to be on. Because guys, I'm a little last minute. I always get it done, but
that's what matters.
But Stephanie will be a gift to you guys in that. What about your? Let's with references cited.
Oh, yes. So I try to reference in my sermon, or at least say the name, because I feel like no one wants to hear what book, chapter, that type of thing. When I use different theologians, so I do try to make sure, because I do feel like that's important to not plagiarize and give someone else the credit. So yes, with references cited. I try
that common too.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. We'll both answer all these questions, and we'll see if we have anything in common. Okay. So I'm going to go through like the general. I've been packing, so I've been going through all my yearbooks, and they ask you all those silly questions. So what's your favorite color?
Blue is one of my favorites.
Duke blue. Oh, you heard it here first. Duke blue is our favorite. Is it Duke blue?
Just any blue.
Oh, so we're going to go with Duke. Yes, we have that in common. What about your favorite food?
I love pizza.
Me too. Pizza?
Pizza.
Okay. Favorite movie?
I have to say Notting Hill is one of my all-time favorites. What about you?
So romantic. Okay, it sounds weird and creepy, but it's Death Becomes Her with Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn about the living dead in Hollywood. Okay, watch it. It was good special effects. It entertained me as a kid. Favorite TV show?
So my husband and I watch a lot of Netflix. So there's an awesome show called Death in Paradise that's set in the Caribbean, but also I love crime shows, but also like has murders. So that's honestly my favorite. It's on BBC,
Wow.
apparently. What about for you, Rachel?
Nice. So I just kind of get into a show and like I'll binge watch it and then I'll be done. So right now I'm watching Designated Survivor season 3.
Saw that on Netflix.
So that one's pretty good. I like that one. Yeah, and then I like a lot of the specials that follow people that do like weird things, you know, or
Did you
like
see the Ted Bundy one?
Yes,
that was good.
Yes. Oh my goodness, Zac Efron. I can never look at him the same way again. All right, let's see. Favorite pet? Do you have a pet?
No. So my husband grew up with dogs. I did not grow up with any pets. So that's been a point of contention. My husband desperately wants a dog. So you can pray hard for that for him. We need a low shed dog though, because I shed my hair all the time. So really only should be one of us shedding all the time.
Well, Stephanie, much like you, I grew up without really any pets at all. And Brandon always had dogs. So my only tip is don't get a big dog because I hate my big dog. I don't hate Chico. I just don't love him. Like when I got home yesterday, he'd taken both trash cans, the recycling and the regular trash, and emptied them out all over the whole first floor. Like the bag was completely empty and there were coffee grounds everywhere. My terrier can't get into the trash can. So Floyd, I'm praying for a dog. I'm praying for like a little teeny tiny chihuahua for you because I think that would be awesome. We have a good question that came in. Do you know Greek?
So I did take Greek. Now, I must say I have not kept up with my Greek as well as Rachel has. So I will have to work on my Greek. I did take Greek and Hebrew, so I will have to work on those.
So did you hear that? Guess what? I never took Hebrew. I don't read Hebrew. So she has a whole extra ancient language than I do. So there's going to be more, word studies in your future for sure. Let's see. Favorite place you've ever vacationed at or seen?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good question. I really loved when I studied abroad in Spain. I went to Italy and went to Venice. And now Venice did not smell. I've heard that Venice sometimes smells, but it did not right then. And it was just gorgeous. So that's one of my favorite places. But my husband and I went to Jamaica for our honeymoon, and that's also gorgeous. So, yeah. What about for you?
I've never done Jamaica. Brandon and I did the Dominican Republic, and that was beautiful. But I think, I love seeing La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. That was beautiful. Yeah. That's like my favorite church of all time. And I don't know. I think I liked we went to Egypt and we did a cruise down the Nile for New Year's Eve. So that was cool just to hike Sinai and to just see the pyramids. I mean, it's just crazy how ancient and just big and vast everything is. So that was fun. So we've got good questions coming in. We want to make sure we tackle these. In what ways or how does God talk to people? And then the Gospels talk a lot about casting out demons. Was that a healing of mental illness or actual demons? Okay, so we'll do number 1 first. How does God talk to you, Stephanie?
Yes, so God usually talks to me through prayer, but also often I feel like Jacob. God would wrestled with Jacob, and I feel like God wrestles with me when I wake up in the middle of the night and have to mull over something. I really like sleep, and God apparently feels like that is sometimes the best time to talk to me. So I often feel like God wrestles with me in that time of not being able to sleep and help to come to a good conclusion. I am a peacemaker. I think I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, so I'm always seeking peace, and so that's how God talks to me.
Nice.
What about for you, Rachel?
Wow. So God talks to me. I think maybe because I'm not a good listener. I don't have the empathy skills she does. That it's not like I'm praying and I hear God's voice, but I might be driving or talking to someone or doing something, and it just kind of hits me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, God, that's what I should be doing. Like, why am I stressing about this? So I kind of just, I don't know. It's like the Holy Spirit kind of kicks me in the butt and says, why don't you think about this? And so I do. And because I'm kind of a spontaneous person and I can be stubborn, and I want to make sure that my way or that the way I'm going is God's way. You know what I mean? That it really is the Holy Spirit. So I'll usually call my best friend, my husband, and a few other trusted folks, especially if it's church related, and say, hey, this is what I think God is saying. What do you think? So like wise counsel for me is another way I feel God communicates. And yeah, just that inner green light of the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
So those are, I think, ways that God talks to us. There are lots of ways that God can talk to people through prayer, through meditation, primarily scripture. I mean, if you ever feel like God is telling you, go out and cheat on your spouse, well, scripture could probably let you know that didn't come from God. It might have come from watching The Bachelorette. Or whatever. I don't know. I've never even watched that show, but sometimes we try to cheapen commitment and love and relationships, and scripture teaches us another way. So scripture's a way God can talk to us. Any other ways?
So I have a few friends who are mystical, and they really claim that God has talked to them boldly in an audible voice, that God doesn't talk to me that way. But I do believe that God, and again, it's not you should do something bad. It is something good. So more likely from God. So yeah.
That's awesome. And sometimes when I get out of my element and I'm, serving or I'm in worship and I'm really focused and centered, I feel I can hear God's voice more than, or journaling. I know a lot of people have really felt like God has spoken to them. Every day they'll kind of write down what they're thinking or what they think God is saying and kind of pray over that, and then read over it a few days or weeks later and be like, yes, God was like, I see God in that. And God's continuing to guide me based on what I've journaled and written down, because sometimes we can forget how involved God is in our lives. So let's see. Okay. Casting out of demons, is that healing of mental illness or actual demons?
That's a hard question. Honestly, I feel like it's a little bit of both. I think in the biblical times, they did not know what mental illness was. And so some of it might have been healing from mental illness. But I also think we have seen people who've been possessed by evil. I think God created us and called us good, and there's goodness in each one of us, but all of us are able to do evil. All of us are able to do bad. And sometimes I do think there can be a spirit of evil that takes over and leads people to do just awful things.
And I kind of agree wholeheartedly with what Stephanie said, that, in the Old Testament, they didn't really know what mental illness, Old and New Testament, they didn't know what mental illness was. So they might have just assumed it was demonic possession. And we see that even today, right? Where sometimes kids are like tragically killed because the parent wants some sort of exorcism and it becomes violent with tying down, and the child ends up suffering when it might be more mental illness related. But then there are times where, the forces of evil are out there. I just think it depends on someone's own awareness of it. And I think in America, we might not hear talk about exorcisms as much because they make us really uncomfortable, because they're not as scientific. You can't take 2 pills and make it go away. And so I hear more stories from my friends who are missionaries in other countries experiencing that, because there's more of an openness to that spiritual realm in that community. And that kind of freaks some of us out. So I hope that helps. Kari, let me know if not. And then from Kelly, in light of today being an election day for some people in our area, a primary, what are key questions followers of Christ should prayerfully consider when deciding which candidates to vote for in any election, knowing no one candidate will embody our same individual moral code, ethics, Christian theology? Ooh, that's a good one. Oh, nice. I love this. Okay.
I really like how you said knowing that no one candidate will embody our same moral code, ethics, Christian theology, because I think you're right. I think you just got to pray a lot about it and let God lead you to who you think is the right person, knowing that no one is perfect. But yeah, do your research. I will confess I didn't vote in the primary because I totally forgot about it and didn't do my research. And so I was like, I should not vote right now because I didn't feel good about not doing my research. So please, God, forgive me.
And I respect that. I didn't vote today because I know I'm moving, and I just felt it was weird to vote in the primaries if I'm going to have different folks representing me out in the red state of Tennessee. So what I would say, as for both parties, this is not intentional. Okay, so for me as a pastor, I know that there are times, something I think is hysterical, and I don't know if you've had this experience, but when new guests come to the gathering, there are times where folks say, oh, you're going to love our pastor. She's totally a Republican, or she's totally a Democrat. So whatever political party they are, they think I must be that one as well. So as people of faith, I think it's super important for all of us to realize that one political party isn't the party for Christians.
Absolutely.
So you can't say, well, if you follow Jesus Christ, then you have to vote this way. I'm sorry, because there are things that both parties do that are not stuff that Jesus would be super thrilled about. So I totally agree with Stephanie. You have to do your research on every single candidate and realize some people get so frustrated with the research. You know, I've talked to some folks who said, I just don't want to vote because I'm a citizen of heaven, not of the earth. But man, there are all kinds of things that you can vote on that help protect the environment and God's creation, that help protect people that are marginalized or vulnerable. So figure out what the candidates feel and who's going to protect as many of the interests that matter to you and to the heart of God as possible. And then do what you can to try to get them elected. So also wondered about not being read up enough to make an educated vote. Yes. So that is good. And I'll do the same thing. So I'll do my research ahead of time, but if I forget or don't know enough, I'll leave that one blank and then just keep going. Because in Methodism, we believe in these 3 general rules, and the first is do no harm. So we don't want to do any harm. Don't vote for someone blindly if you have no idea what they stand for. So yes, that's a good one. Yes. If you guys have any other questions, we have 4 minutes left. So I'm gonna ask Stephanie. We'll both share a story. Okay. So we're both females in ministry, which is not shocking to have a female pastor here at the Gathering at Scott Memorial. But for a lot of churches, the thought of a young female pastor is still a little scary. So do you want to tell a story or two about a really good time or a really difficult time that you had being a female in ministry?
Sure. So our Modern Service Praise team is awesome and get invited to different places to share their music. And so we were invited to another church out in Suffolk. I even forget the church name, so I can't even tell you. That happens to be led by a male pastor, and his wife, I think, is also considered a pastor. So I went there. I think I had just gotten married too. So I went there and met the pastors. Our worship leader introduced me. She knew them, so introduced me, and the wife was like, "Oh, so your husband's a pastor too?" And I was totally taken aback because, you know, I am now married, and was like, "Well, no, he's not a pastor." And then my wonderful worship leader, who grew up Baptist, said afterward, she said, "Stephanie, she's used to a denomination where you can only be a female pastor if your husband's a pastor." So it totally blindsided me. I can't even remember exactly what I said to her, but I'm sure it was probably not the most appropriate because I was like, of course I can be a pastor on my own.
I remember there was a time when I was doing field education at Duke. So I was in a small rural Methodist church, and the pastor left to go on a mission trip in another country for 2 weeks. And I'd only been there for like 3 weeks. So I was still getting to know people. And a man in his 40s very suddenly died of a heart attack. And so I rushed to the emergency room to be there for him and his family. And in the waiting room, there were like 30 of his closest family members, all Southern Baptist. And his mom took a look at me and she said, "Oh no, honey, you're not praying with us." And I was like, "Lord, what do I do?" Like, I was like 25. I mean, young. I didn't want to force ministry on them, but he was a member of the church, and the church did have a male pastor, but he was out of the country, and they were grieving. So I just tried to not force myself into the situation, but just said, well, I'm just going to stand here and pray silently, and I'm here for you if you need it. And throughout the course of planning the funeral and everything else, when the time for the funeral came, and then we had our big meal afterwards, as Methodists, we like to have a nice, big, hearty, carb-filled meal after funerals. And his mom said, "Pastor lady, I want you to sit next to me." So like, even at the end of that time, she was open. Now, she didn't come to the Methodist church. She still went to her Southern Baptist church, but she acknowledged that I had a role to play, that I was helpful in that situation. So that was funny. And then my only other all-time favorite pastor lady story is when I was running late for church and I stopped in to get communion bread at Walmart or something, the Hawaiian loaves. And I went to check out and I was in my collar and there was a young clerk checking me out. And he's like, "Here you are, father, mother." He didn't know what to call me. He was like a Catholic, and he's like, "I'm so uncomfortable." And I was like, "You can call me father, mother. I don't care. Just come to church. It'll be awesome." So awesome. It's good, right?
It is good. It is good. But it also has allowed me to be places where I'm not sure men would have been invited as easily. And so there is a blessing too to being the lady pastor.
There is.
Yes.
So we need to get Stephanie a mug for her first Sunday that says Boss Lady Pastor, because she's finally leading,
Yes.
solo leading the church.
Yes.
And then what should we get Floyd? What's a good welcome gift for him? That's her husband. She's been married 4 years.
Yes. I think
That's
pastor's
so
wife
cute.
would be really funny.
Okay, pastor's wife mug, Don Darcy. That is your job. You've got 2 weeks to come up with it. And a little parking spot for him too,
Oh, yes,
right?
the
Didn't
parking
Floyd say his own pastor's wife parking
Yes.
spot? Awesome. Wow, well, it's like 8:30.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. It's been great doing this, and Rachel's taught me, so we'll see how the first time goes. Thank you for your grace.
She'll be amazing. She's ready to rock it out, and she'll make sure the camera isn't as blurry as I set it up to be. So it was so good to see
Yes,
all of
thank
you.
you guys.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.